I've spent my career staring into the abyss, trying to understand what makes a monster. And the first thing you learn is that they rarely come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes they come with a law degree, a winning smile, and a job at a suicide crisis hotline. They look a lot like Ted Bundy. To perform a psychological autopsy, you have to start at the beginning. And for Theodore Robert Cowell, born November 24, 1946, the beginning was a lie. He was born in a home for unwed mothers, a source of deep shame for his devoutly religious family. So, to hide this secret, they constructed a fiction. Ted was brought to his grandparents' home in Philadelphia and raised to believe they were his parents, and that his own mother, Louise, was his older sister. This wasn't just a white lie told to the neighbors. It was a complete fabrication of his identity, a foundational falsehood woven into the very fabric of his existence. And the environment this lie was meant to protect was anything but stable. His grandmother, the woman he called Mother, suffered from severe depression and underwent electroshock treatments. His grandfather, the man he called Father, was by all accounts a tyrannical bully, a bigot with a violent temper who was known to beat animals and abuse his own family. Chillingly, Bundy later told his friend Ann that he identified with this man. From the very beginning, the seeds of pathology were there. There's a story, one that makes the hair on your arms stand up, of a 3-year-old Ted, fascinated by knives, arranging them in a circle around his sleeping aunt as she napped on the sofa. This isn't just a child's prank. From a clinical perspective, it's a profound early indicator of a lack of empathy and a fascination with power over a vulnerable person. When his mother eventually married a hospital cook named Johnny Bundy, Ted was disgusted. He resented his stepfather's working-class status and modest income, already displaying a grandiose sense of self and a contempt for anyone he deemed inferior. His entire childhood was a masterclass in deception. The family's lie didn't just teach him that secrets were acceptable. It taught him that one's entire public identity could be a performance. It provided him with the psychological blueprint for the mask of sanity that all psychopaths learn to wear. As a young man, Bundy's internal world of resentment and grandiosity began to collide with reality. At the University of Washington, he fell in love with Diane Edwards. She was everything he wasn't, but desperately wanted to be: wealthy, classy, influential. When she broke up with him, citing his immaturity and lack of ambition, it was more than just a heartbreak. It was a profound narcissistic injury, and he never forgot it. Look at his victims, attractive college students with long dark hair parted in the middle, annoyed. He was killing Diane Edwards over and over again. After that rejection, Bundy meticulously reinvented himself. He became a star psychology student, a rising volunteer in Republican politics, and even worked at a suicide crisis hotline, a perfect laboratory for studying human vulnerability up close. He then reinitiated his relationship with Diane, let her fall in love with the new improved Ted, and then, in a calculated act of psychological revenge, he abruptly dumped her. At the same time, he was building another life with Elizabeth Kloepfer, a divorced single mother he met in a Seattle bar in 1969. To her, he was the perfect partner, loving, caring, a doting father figure to her young daughter. But Liz was the first to see the cracks in the mask. She noticed his strange disappearances at night, found odd items like a meat cleaver in his desk and surgical gloves in his pocket. As women began vanishing around Seattle in 1974, she saw the police sketch of a suspect named Ted, who drove a VW Beetle, and a cold dread set in. She called the police, not once, but twice, trying to warn them about the man she loved. By 1974, the hunt was on. Bundy perfected what I call the confidence trick, a modus operandi built on exploiting the fundamental decency of his victims. He would wear a fake cast on his arm or a sling, hobble on crutches, and ask for help carrying books to his car. Other times, he'd impersonate a police officer, a figure of authority no one would question. Once they were near his tan Volkswagen, the trap was sprung. He had removed the front passenger seat, creating a space on the floor where he could quickly hide an unconscious victim from view. Nowhere was this method more horrifically successful than at Lake Sammamish State Park on July 14, 1974. It was a beautiful sunny day, the park packed with people. First, he approached Janice Ott, a 23-year-old probation worker. With his arm in a sling, he asked for her help loading a sailboat onto his car. She agreed. Witnesses even overheard him introduce himself. Casual. "Hi, I'm Ted." She was never seen alive again. Just 4 hours later, in the same park, he did it again. He approached 19-year-old Denise Nazlazlaz, used a similar ruse, and she too vanished. You have to appreciate the sheer, psychopathic audacity. He's hunting in a crowded park, using his real first name and relying on nothing more than a fake cast and the tragic, predictable decency of strangers. This is where we need to get clinical. Psychologists use a tool called the Hare Psychopathy Checklist Revised, or PCL R, to measure these traits. It's a 40-point scale. Most people score near 0. A clinical diagnosis of psychopathy usually requires a score of 30 or more. Ted Bundy scored a 39.25. Let's put it on screen so you can see what we're talking about. His luck finally ran out in Utah in 1975, when a patrolman found his murder kit, handcuffs, rope, a ski mask, in his VW. He was convicted of kidnapping and later extradited to Colorado to face murder charges. And this is where Bundy's grandiosity took center stage. Insisting on acting as his own lawyer, he convinced a judge to remove his shackles during a pre-trial hearing in Aspen. During a recess, he was left alone in the courthouse library. He simply jumped out a second-story window and vanished into the mountains. He was on the run for 6 days before being recaptured. But he wasn't done. Back in his cell in Glenwood Springs, he planned his masterpiece. For months, his girlfriend Carol Ann Boone smuggled him cash. He got a hacksaw. He lost 35 pounds. And on December 30th, 1977, while most of the guards were on Christmas break, he squeezed through a hole he'd sawed in his cell ceiling, crawled through the ductwork, changed into civilian clothes in the jailer's apartment, and walked right out the front door. He had a 17-hour head start before anyone even knew he was gone. This is a critical turning point. A predator who succeeds on this scale develops a feeling of invincibility, of omnipotence. His need for stimulation, a key psychopathic trait, escalates. The escape didn't just free him physically, it psychologically unleashed a more primal, disorganized violence. The careful, organized hunter of Washington was gone. A new, more frenzied monster was heading to Florida. Bundy was free, and a man... Just 2 weeks after his escape, on January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What followed was not a calculated abduction, but a blitz attack of pure rage. In less than 15 minutes, he moved from room to room, bludgeoning and strangling 4 women as they slept. He murdered 21-year-old Margaret Bowman and 20-year-old Lisa Levy. He left Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler for dead, their jaws and skulls fractured. Their survival was his first major mistake. He then fled and attacked a 5th woman, Cheryl Thomas, in a nearby apartment, leaving her with permanent injuries. His final victim was his youngest. On February 9, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her junior high school. It was a desperate, sloppy crime. The net was closing, and he was finally captured for the last time on February 15, driving a stolen Volkswagen Beetle. Bundy's trial was the ultimate spectacle, and he was the star. Acting as his own lawyer, he turned the courtroom into his personal stage, a final performance for a captivated national audience. He referred to himself in the third person, Mr. Bundy, and flashed his famous smile at the cameras, seemingly unconcerned with the horrific testimony against him. It was the height of narcissistic delusion, but reality finally caught up to him. The one piece of evidence he couldn't charm his way out of was on the body of Lisa Levy. He had bitten her during the attack, and in a dramatic courtroom moment, a forensic odontologist declared that the bite marks were a perfect match to Bundy's distinctively crooked teeth. The mask had finally, irrevocably, slipped. Even then, the performance wasn't over. During the penalty phase of his second trial, for the murder of Kimberly Leach, he called Carol Ann Boone to the stand. And under the guise of questioning her, he proposed. She accepted, and thanks to an obscure Florida law, they were married, right there in the courtroom. He turned his own capital murder trial into a wedding. The narcissism was absolute. In the end, after all the analysis, what are we left with? Not a misunderstood genius, not a criminal mastermind. We are left with a textbook psychopath, a man who scored an almost perfect 39 out of 40 on the Hare checklist.